There we go.
All right.
Okay. Your partner said that it was okay to record.
Yes.
Is that okay? We will unlist it and we will send it to you after the session. It will take a few days, but fine.
Totally.
Ooh, can I steal it real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
It's been so cold in New York. I feel like deciding the stuff outside. I mean, it was just fun. I was expecting warm too.
Ditto in Iowa. We've had like 2
Good.
negative 11 days.
I look good.
You're good.
NYU debate docs and I with docs getting all these emails. Plan. The United States federal government should substantially strengthen collective bargaining rights by amending Title VII of the Civil Rights Act 1964 to include collective bargaining and threat to action. Advantage 1 is corporatism. The courts fundamentally underpinned the peak of labor strikes during the individual era. 20 years later, they eventually moved to Lewis 23. During FDR's advent, Justice Sterling committed a laissez-faire next year, issued 2 landmark proposals for the June Revolution. Supreme Court changed public opinion to make organized labor conference boards, issuing injunctions for strikes, boycott, support the enforcement of labor to hold peaceful meetings, fund World War II reaction. The power that organized labor gained during New Deal public action courage, the tap for the court, the ban on secondary boycotts, state rights, work laws, allowed injunction, strike, and corporatism cannibalized that progressive energy by setting a solution as opposed to inequality as a course of injustice. The decline of labor's power is story of leftist neoliberalization, featured around 2021. Social media waiting prices for the multi-focus on recognition, bolster it was a neoliberalization agenda to integrate insights everything we learned since 1960 anti-capitalist law, most with those of labor movements, right corporations trying to institutions their profits, can have building show no social profit. That's bound as against someone's supposed to sham, progressive failed, new social movements becoming anti-wealth, liberal American movements, anti-racism, LGBTQ+, right? Remember, there's a cast of video, charisma, renewalism, pink greenwashing, when Dan finally broke, which allowed us to former, and through his medical mayor, neoliberal corporatism, and entrenched social hegemony of the two-party system in search of political control by J-Team. Less already mentioned, neoliberalized, left of market friendly, new political embrace party, white collar Democratic platform, I said, it comes to the early progressive party of the Liberty Transit program, retained collective bargaining rights around 19% political by the 90s, parties have market forces that equality may be tempered to protect by 1990s, third direction, away from defending moral issues, understanding employment to be addressed by Mark Clinton, Gore platform, no emphasis on power, working force, rents of 45 to 2008 confirmed, rise of the neoliberal left, abandoned neoliberalism, formally more time circles, resolutions, people projects, board not, making strongly clear in opposition, making all became neoliberal, and simple quantitative measure that had the left shifted in a neoliberal direction, post-1970s party, it made election year to be market supporting and law to pressing for dequantiation, left cross, which in 1980s, and requiring labor to re-corporation to trap any attempt to return power to the workers. The NLRB has become political football and is doomed to fail, compromise their team. Whereas they rely on power with vulnerable and states with low union density, the current Bush reform push into catch-22, labor can't get reform until it's political class, sorry. But it can't grow until it achieves reform, even reform, make the political process, the board's unable to protect workers. The board's practically vulnerable position stand the target for those that see limited rights, which limit the board's power and the Republican membership, the board of reform, and actually relative to fully defend and abolish the board of political football. The board will function in the concert of political swing, making 2 periods to ensure productions, and this corporation should ignore the law, allowing us to get an all-time high with no recourse for workers until 25. 60 million workers want unions, fresh recession, union dignity decline, more of focus on union busting, defeat workers, corporations or corporate do unlawful campaigns acts, including terminating sports act retaliation, to target union activists. Starbucks workers voted for union 2021. The unlawful anti-union charge facing first largest state 771 unfair labor practice carried out in place that union busting is illegal but conflict or inconsequential. And the workers voted to form anti-union 2022. Courts on election said publicly and everyone has 350 labor practices. If you do an election, you lose in the end by failing the organization, laying every opportunity to refuse the losing the NLRB, and by losing the weaker remedies in the NLRA, limited remedial and penalties on different corporations. And authoritarianism fills the power vacuum made through this labor's influence strongly reversed as 35 Wars 18. Relation to political climate and authoritarian tendencies, social structure, the working class, using think tanks, ruling class trade, authoritarian terms that are the unity, working class, corporate control, neoliberal combination order on money, labor rights, inversion of history, corporate trade, works with each other for profession, profit, lack unity, and authoritarian specifically expansions, land wars, national integration, and wealth inequality, only question which sounds first, candidate 2. Class drivers said developed domination, all class tendencies and their demise, they prevent inequalities, leads to struck wealth, we didn't fight over expansion, degradation, oligarchy, the whole side is corruption, the carbon shocks to disease, war, climate change, wealth inequality, peace, class favor assessment for all, 25 violence, elite research, their dominance, the path value rate source, say we have new exciting people in past for now, let's take the services, they use the farmland gathers, they were infrastructure. Advantage 2 is the courts. Trump is another cause the project remembers the inevitable collapse of Congress for 17. No agrees political absurd authoritarian involved direct weakening political crisis, understood blockage institutions include those finance, Trump's post trial that clear violation enable hegemony prosper, ruling class actors and worldview common prior to Trump, and one of progressive neoliberalism, defeat reaction neoliberalism to the Republican Party. This is also surrender power over the basic generation, or reaction to different ranks and neoliberal will control labor rights, sacrifice and neoliberalism economies are uncompetitive reaction market reaction populism, high reaction policy, populist distribution, popular activity, bait switch and banning policy, high reaction neoliberalism is unstable fragile, and the modern conservative legal movement is on a fundamental governmental attention and seeks to limit government power and executive authority. Goes 25. The overarching efforts to reduce the government underestimated use of a large state. The pursuit of the rule of the traditional conservative and non-conservative want to report the state is tearing it down, firing everyone, fire confiscation, and systematic decay of state parties, while the RNC maintain Trump image. And the executive theory, the angles searching the weakened agencies, organizations, workers, schedule policy, the first step, 25. Trump targeting workforce attack will make the executive and partisan weapon. Progressive schedule after name schedule policy, careers, blessing, civil source, let's let anyone speak against the orders, and between political and fire schedule policy, for your executive, notwithstanding independent agencies and Congress. And direction efforts like lower by the absolute attention of modern conservative and still court slash spending option, right 25. Executive branch and liberal anti-regulatory agenda push on Trump to have more scrutiny, making use of new tools, unable to first presidential doctrine facility, which many initiatives have been approved by Congress likely to remain unable to acting the balls in the hands of the courts. And the plan shifts towards Article 3 courts away from ALJ's key limiting executive influence or agency for years million model 25. ALJ's under Article 3 such ALJ's criticism for independence insurance and constitutional authority team adjudicate, but without some amendment direction during competition to remedy issue in case currently allowed ALJ's, the power ALJ's for the constitutional impartiality ALJ's approval of petition to align with president challenges to the more schemes have already been fuel and rating executive power plans loose news spin-ups climate change more 25. Sharp rebels and develop critical of government fails, layoffs left new arsenal that dangerously exposed. Exactly the nation, we can ability to see threats, vulnerable, coordinate terrorist, and try to funding fees and CC, undermine ability to refund these profile positive pipeline rushers, conclusions to oil spills, remote staff required, reverse pollution laws, waste cleanup, provide hundreds of hundred, those disaster, and chaos. Solvency. The rights to Title 7 enables our to a strong collective bargaining rights, a shot in the arm of court correct judicial system. Compromise 13. We will writing labor organizing civil rights law that exist side by side in the law. Right to organize ability to free position, rights, civil rights standing into a covenant. Acting Title 7 rights and employers for actions race pollution or national origin, initial staff to supplement original categories, unlimited age, pregnancy, disability, and debt practically carries has not been frozen. And civil rights are typically key through warrants, 1 injunctions. Title 7 regulatory scheme moves beyond union different time negotiation use of injunctions. Title 15. Class to combine non-compliant right directive to combine with Title 7 firms. Class to combine less than loss of reputation and violation analysis. Vision finds positive improvements in employment of black workers on schemes. Eventual promotion process included class to Title 7. Time murder action to firm guilty violation increases 1970s. Let's say the negative impact on the umbrella of the firms would drop a firm value degree greater than cost of settling because the outcome of employee litigation includes the justification of compensation paid. The market penalty reflects cost changes outside of any effect on employment practices. 2 is budgeting. Thus, enforce companies to disclose the information that people status quo covered by 13. Hearing at the NLB law pre-trial discovery limiting scope of the case against the employer. Hearings entirely witnesses documents the employer voluntary party field litigation with the process. The process is burden on the defendant. Permit men have access to the employer's files evidence, bringing fairness to the process. Several important differences between the process and Title 7 and the NLRA. Title 7 provides right to sue the employer. That means any set of based on the plaintiff financial ability in the claim. The court may appoint counsel in case under Title 7 will agree evidence. So for prosecutor discovery will require the employer to reveal his past employment practices, financial and related discovery, based heavy burden on the defendant employee cases. And 3, fee shifting. Upon right action designed with antagonist and government making agency capacity relevant to any solving question. For 10. Fee awards can be resources of adding to a force capacity. Title 7 other by factor of contrary interference that private enforcement will rarely be initiated by minorities because of proportionally concentrated in the South. Other work for publishing foreign United States account for 30% of all charges filed 30% of all partly prosecuted lawsuits. Federal court featuring practices enable the judicial bar to decide if you despite factoring field combined not doing their job. Sorry, plaintiff or fees create while telling lawyers that be ready, willing, and able to enforce Title 7 generating levels of enforcement rights, enforcement unprecedented history, fee shifting improvements, mobilizing practice rights, provision have been enabling, reducing enforcement rights, lack of capacity, enforcement rights, fee shifting revenue away of organizing state capacity, engaging in commercial forms of state building. I'm gonna have 2. There are lawyers engaging in the government administration right now, that's 25. Trump getting crushed in lower courts, official annexing the rules, official left, which added to workloads, those remain a new hire. Increase missing for judges, Trump simply pushing on defensive judges and less willing to give the government the benefit of the doubt, so described what the court's finding. And the law is a tool, not a strategy. Finds methods to articulate demand and to mobilize violent movements, especially the kinds of labor, Beacon 22. Military start mobilize law to provide justice, law, private language, which can be articulated as cause of action at one end spectrum. One end of the spectrum, law is this, as it goes on reproducing existing structures to implement the role of law, guarding injustice, it would be revision job, pollution, scholars, identifying the law as a tool of justice, violations, recognize persons, but cautions against direction dismissal, moves law from bottom up strategic action related to mutual relation vice versa. And PI is deeply valuable for discussion debate, for future advocacy, political effectiveness through a political process. Number 15. What worlds are virtual, their produce efforts to embody which create icon, with future political rationalities, gamers learning arguments like key success with applying them, political context, experiences element to what is coded, the pride room for a critical agent. Game establishes what agencies intervening in the role through the various theories are enacted and reworking organized effort to produce two subjects. And future thinking isn't depolarizing, it's key to as change 117. No doubt the government has been producing anxious subject, but does this mean all future oriented thinking or actions shifting depolarizing? It would be a mistake to produce future dealable collection project. Doing so, let's scholars for dubious political conclusions by treating the present untrackable person sees existing regions and discuss politics to abandon good life and measures the future order practices. It's to erase crucial in how things are and how they have to be. And labor rights advocacy is transformative, empowering even the paradigm is historically fraught, rights and protecting vice parents good. McCann level 20. I'm listening to dismiss rights law, provides most important to sites and special resources for business immigrant, non-warrant workers, and remain informers, legal role such society, and law should not be viewed as occasion they may try to power, but at the same time, curb that power and check off and for within that radical critique of legal policy analysis now important, that will turn group legal principles to expand equality, worker struggle, English reformer and character from NAACP, PLM, 2 women in the wage, collecting movement rights for victims of DV, Filipino nationals, non-required groups, and legal norms. 50 seconds. Expanding bargaining rights reduces the appeal of far-right populism, watering down rebranding effects. Stall 25. Research into the far-right unions pivotal to counter to social dialogue, opening to display public grievances, democracy succumbs to isolation, unions paramount, collective decision-making, yield progressive outcomes, unions grant accountability, extend beyond workplaces, provide first-hand experience and solidarity through co-op, exemplify democratic principles, more likely to hold pro-democratic views, unsatisfactory working and limited autonomy, greater distrust, and more susceptible to right-wing ideologies. Collective bargaining, potent antidote to far-right movements, writes Schultz Bueller.
I will send out that card.
I'm good.
Okay.
Okay, the Meekin evidence, tag, the law is a tool, not a strategy. The law is your tool, what is the 1AC's strategy?
Civil rights.
But civil rights through the law?
Well, we think the civil rights movement is something that's worth building upon. We think it's an incomplete, the project rights is incomplete. We think it's worth building upon.
How do we get there? What's the strategy to get there? How do we build upon
We
it?
use the tool of the law.
Like the law,
but
not
the
the
law
end
is
point.
a tool, not a strategy, is your tag. What's
Well,
your strategy?
I think the distinction, or at least how I'm understanding your question, like the law is part of the strategy, but the strategy is inclusive of other things like
What are the
movements,
things?
labor,
What kind of
unions,
movements?
the civil rights movement, labor movements.
What do those movements have to do with the app?
We think they're important to check corporatism. Cal, anything else?
We think our option is fascism or labor. We think that we kind of course correct the history of corporatism kind of killing labor's strength.
Fraser evidence edited for inappropriate language. Why would you edit a card for language?
We don't want to.
No, why? It doesn't matter this evidence. This is on 3 different cards. Why might you, when you do the research on ONEC, edit for language? I don't
We
have
think-
a problem with
We
the
think the language that was used in the card was bad.
Okay, language matters even when it's not the plan text. That makes sense to me. Who enforces the plan?
The federal government,
Who specifically?
normal means, Congress passes the bill.
Okay.
President does not veto it.
Okay.
Supreme Court, right? Cal? Anything else?
That's about the passage of the bill. I'm asking about enforcement. If
Oh, sure.
your labor rights are violated, what happens?
So our nuts evidence is pretty good on this. We think lawyers are winning suits right now, particularly against Trump, but also corporations broadly. But we think the plan is kind of a key internal
But like, what
intermediary.
labors? What suits? Where do you
So,
do the lawsuit?
The Logan evidence is really good about talking about uniqueness for union busting. It says that a ton of companies have been already found guilty of over like 700 charges of violations of the NLRA.
Yeah.
But the NLRA penalties are so weak. The enforcement mechanism is using the federal district courts that adjudicate civil rights
Okay.
discrimination cases. We think
What
that
are those courts? How does one get to the courts? How do you take a case to them? Well, okay. First of all, you have read a piece of evidence. It's like there's illegal union busting now. How do you solve it? With the law?
Mhm.
So the
Yeah,
law
because-
solves the illegal thing. Why isn't the law?
correct.
solving the illegal thing?
Yeah. The whole point is that the NLRA penalties are so small, civil rights penalties big.
Yeah, injunctions, burdens of infusion, are all penalties that would severely make cases winnable, or within you won.
Okay. If I have my rights violated for labor, where do I go?
You
Under the plan.
file a civil rights case saying that your
With who?
Huh?
With who?
with I believe it's the EOC, that you don't need
EEOC.
to approve it.
Okay.
Any kind of argument that says, oh, they're overcapacitated doesn't matter.
Sorry.
I'll speak up here for the one and see. I'm scared that's a thing.
Don't get down on it. You want your timer?
Alright, 1 and 2 is head, the order is 1 in the case.
So what?
1 in the case, yeah. Until we know.
Is there a specific advantage you want me to put on?
Case.
It's like 3 minutes in normal memes. Wherever you put that.
Okay, sure.
There we go.
Got it.
But let me also. Yeah. Okay. Okay.
collective bargaining reform are structured around an infrastructural violence. The unquestioned value of productivity and the disavowal of dependency is an ableist commitment which guarantees the capacitation of the heroic citizen worker who can pull themselves up by the bootstraps and the debilitation of those who cannot. Kim 25. Infrastructural violence employs organized abandonment, administrative violence, and debility. Mobilizing welfare states emerge from welfare administration, manufacturing, neglect, motorization, and profit-driven system. Infrastructural violence also describes the intended enabling for resource population, which fortify white supremacy, heteropatriarchal nuclear family, class stratification. These links racial and disablement to simultaneous creation of white enablement through exploitative work for program, and wear away at disabled survival with disabling low-income and racialized people in mass. Capitalist demands to reserve those who can afford to outsource care labor, creating a dualized organization of social reproduction. This fortifies racial and class hierarchies across domestic and global scales. Unevenly distributed, ostensibly anti-establishment projects conspire with the normative interests of nation states and capital, fundamentally shaped by ableist ideas dependency, which define work in ways that reduce the devaluation of disability. The ideological narrative elements of infrastructural violence akin to figures as a welfare clean, non-citizen migrant, and the disabled non-workers. The ideological arm of infrastructural violence indexes state author narratives. A discursive strategy to privatize care, single-issue nationalist movements depend on labor extracted from multiple marginalized members. So much depends on the disregarded care work of women of color, including the functioning of political movements and academic institutions. The strange affinity of particular population that rendered vulnerable to death and devaluation. The dominant discourse of dependency rhetorical instrument justifying racialized death and disablement following the abolition of legal racialized discrimination. In the exploitative version of dependency myth of the undocumented migrant worker. Disability can be present even in the absence of straightforward representation within history of labor, less a category of identity, more a framework for infrastructural violence, and a lens for making post-welfare U.S. able-bodied assumptions that organize the world, disables them while enabling others, assessing surveillance, punishment, and control, organizing state investment and abandonment. It is impossible to understand U.S. infrastructure without understanding disability. Normative ideologies around dependency, labor, and production undergird resource austerity, a representational strategy, category labor, and built environmental network. Markets rely on eugenics to enforce the wage. Under the guise of rehabilitation, those who cannot meet the productivity standards of the average worker are subject to mass incarceration in prisons or asylums and forced sterilization. Rosenthal 21. Eugenics carry on against disabled people, people of color, women demonstrate the insidious way the elimination policy remained persistent. Disabled people represent a troublesome source of counter-profitability. As the Fed defines it, to be disabled is unable to engage in a paying job. Systematically devaluing disabled people represent an economic problem necessitating a political solution. The prevailing solution was mass institutionalization, sterilization, and social elimination, codified, executed, and rendered illicit incarceration, asylums, and prisons behind the pretense of rehabilitative structures favoring social removal and warehousing with the gross standardized, competitive, and time-regulated norms, labor, and bodies, minds that are less profitably conformed to our liabilities. As ideological coercion, it sends a message for all those who conform the institutional wage, those who fail. Welfare trust remains below the lowest wage rate, deserving separated from the undeserving, although able to labor be coerced into it. Intermediary from the standpoint of capitalist world economy, disabled people can target incarceration and sterilization for the particular history of white supremacy, colonialist expansionism, and racialized slavery. This disproportionately comprises black people, migrants, and indigenous people. The one who sees nostalgia for a return to the New Deal sanitizes social democracy as salvation. It wrote policy and reform in the grammar of common good, apprehends disability as a drain on the resources of the nation as a whole, which is why the New Deal solution to disabled life was eugenics. Got me 25. Policies which enable labor participation must be understood as fundamentally capitalist and social reproduction, relegating care to individual responsibility, relying on the private household policies, reinforces family norms, encourage nuclear family formation as a union position that workers have a right to the nuclear family, to reinforce bourgeois social values. There's thus nothing radical about progressive welfare state, always internally contradictory and reactionary, apparent in migrants and women who are subjected to persistent relegation to low-wage work. Social democratic feminist models for collective social reproduction espouse eugenic theories and sought to ensure racialized or disabled people do not have children. The interconnection of social democracy and eugenics is not as contradictory as it sounds if we take seriously the eugenic belief in a better form of reproduction and social democracy, emphasis on the health of the people. The one who sees rhetorical project relies on narrative prosthesis as constitutively ableist. Mitchell and Snyder 2000. Narrative prosthesis situates a representational life of disability and unsteady rhetorical stance body need lacking needs compensation of proselytizing body or rhetorical figure carries assumption about what is aberrant. To proselytize is to institute a notion of tolerable deviance. To proselytize bodies is made to rule, not the exception. All bodies are deficient, materiality proves it's created people. This is a linguistic relation which cannot be average. A normal body is idealized and measured divorced from observation of bodies which are variable. This fails to consider the contingencies of bodies within the social and historical context. It is thoroughly artificial. The app seeks to mitigate dependence by offering a more favorable exchange rates for labor time. This framing of dependence as the fulcrum of capitalist violence castigates disability as its paradigmatic example and disavows the universal independence at the heart of all life. That means 19. We are told capital depends on labor, the boss is parasitic on labor, but dependency is not what's wrong. We're all dependent. The construction of care is labor, which testifies recognition in exchange. Less is reciprocal give and take than give and give, or take and take. So when we enter exchange or surrounded by excess until we work beyond the notion of production of value by labor, we will have failed to recognize the dependency. A site of accumulation that is marked as disposable. Disability is seen as akin to death, even deemed a fate worse than death, because disability runs through all work. Disability can be independent from the violence of capitalism in the sense that we need to make rights-based claims in ways that are legible. Vote negative to refuse to build a vision for labor politics on a violent infrastructure of productivism that disavows dependencies. Abastano 19. It's hard work to be disabled, even if you're barred from work or behind bars and working resistance. Disability, labor, and separate. Why are we being told they are? What is separating this enmeshed mess into neat categories? The seam of work is the disavow of the common dependency. I'm less interested in reciprocal give and take rather than give and give or take and take. Some of you enter process of exchange is surrounded by accessing a disability with your work beyond production of value by labor. Disfiguring consensus-based realities. What gives what's being given away that impossible life of dreams, looking at all those spaces deemed extra disability runs, so all work is about dependencies, pressure to find disability, can't be intensive violence and capital. We need to draw a circle around who counts to make race-based claims. What disability has a privileged relationship to form this capacity to deform categories, and so we ask how can we live? Think about gambling probabilities, thresholds, and doors. The blind is a bad force bed. The player can't decline to play no matter what a double blind is. A pair of false choice. Superimpose the and as a double blind or the or as a blind. As a double blind describes the stakes of dependency, something you're bound to do that you still plan anyway, deforming, dissolving boundaries, and still being back. Case. First, the EOC enforces employment and discrimination under the Civil Rights Act and will weaponize the plan to escalate anti-white discrimination cases. Look in 26. Trump said that the Civil Rights Act resulted ultimately in the discrimination against white men. It was a reverse discrimination. Trump's Equal Employment Opportunity Commission urged white men to come forward if they can prove they have experienced discrimination at work. The agency established under the Civil Rights Act enforces federal anti-discrimination laws in the workplace. The agency chair, Andrea Lucas, said white men may have a claim to recover money under the federal civil rights laws. Contact EEOC as soon as possible. EEOC is identifying, attacking, and eliminating discrimination against white male employees. Meanwhile, Trump has prevented the EEOC from doing anything by simply not replacing members, and the current term was to transphobically protect women from, quote, biological realities through 25. Currently, the EEOC cannot make any big policy changes. It lacks support. Lucas has vowed to restrain same portions of the EEOC's harassment guidance that makes it clear that trans people aren't protected. Lucas contends that women in danger by ignoring biological realities. Lucas said in a statement last month that must end. When the EEOC members try and tell Trump no, he fires them and replaces them with reactionaries. Through 25. I don't have my policies used 5 years on. She's been told that her radical views, including the position that DEI is permissible under law, make her unfit to serve. And DOJ is headed by Attorney General Pam Bondi. Bondi will make pro-labor decisions. She was trained up the most effective pro-employee law and lobbying firm in the country. Day 25. DOJ shutters another antitrust case by hiring the most powerful lobby shops the firm Bondi worked at prior to becoming an AG. And Bondi hates migrants. She'll selectively enforce a plan to crack down. 1.5. Bondi reshapes the Justice Department on immigration policing changes driven by crackdown on immigration. Bondi issued orders including creating a weaponization of working groups to investigate criminal probe the Trump's alleged criminal actions and pause funding to sanctuaries. And Article 3 courts love unitary executive theory turns advantage true. That's 25. Over the past 15 years, the court moved to an unambiguously unitarian pro-presidential direction. These decisions could suggest anti-unitarian decisions are on increasingly thin ice. Thomas articulated the desire to repudiate the erroneous precedent. Other justices shared that desire. Remarks by conservative justices indicate the court will soon reassess anti-unitarian precedent. Kavanaugh wrote whether this court will narrow or overrule precedent. There's a least a reasonable prospect we will do so. Justice Kagan said the majority was raring to embrace unitary executive. The AFT's top-down vision for making change through legal tinkering with anti-discrimination precedent re-engains a structure of politics as a single issue and siloed, reinforcing structural forms of violence that NYU has set out to solve. Crenshaw 89. Neither black or racial policies nor feminist theory can ignore intersexual experiences. Those who move this claim as a respective constituents to ordering to include black women both. If they were to embrace complexity, not simply a matter of political will, but due to the way of thinking about discrimination, which structures politics and their struggles are categorized as singular issues. This supports a descriptive and normative view of society that reinforces status quo. A top-down approach looks beneath the prevailing concept of discrimination and challenge complacency that accompanies belief in the effectiveness of this framework. Anything else you want to hear?
Do you read the unitary executive theory?
Yeah.
That's fine. Did you read the narrative processes link?
Everything.
That's fine.
I'm good.
Okay, cool. Status the alt.
If we go for the K, we'll go for the alt.
So it's conditional?
If we go for the K, we'll go for the alt. The
Yeah,
status
we'll
quo
go
is
for the
always
K.
a viable competitive option.
Yeah.
Okay.
But like, we're gonna go for the K.
Okay, the alt result in the world of the affirmative?
I don't know what that means. The alternative
Not a
is
floating
an
point.
alternative to discourse over the one they see.
I know, can it become a floating pick later?
Refusal is always a prior question with the generation of alternatives.
Okay, sounds good to me. The productivity link, I want to understand, I guess, what the aft is to make this worse, i.e. if markets are
Productivity
eugenic
link,
right
you're
now,
referring to
the first, the markets rely on eugenics.
Kim?
That's
that's
an
an
impact
impact
card.
Rosenthal with impact card?
Yeah.
Okay, then the narrative prosthesis link is the argument, I guess I don't understand what the.
Narrative prosthesis
link
is about representations of disability that make it always the impact or the bad thing that institutes like the notion of standard body. Spencer, you got specific.
Where did we do
I
that?
think you got specific lines. It's in their burn lawn piece of.
Oh yeah, not the broad evidence. The wilder evidence describes first the cruel optimism producing the anxious, what was it, docile subject, and in juxtaposition, if we don't look to the future, we become delusional. That is a narrative prosthesis
Sure.
that makes an end goal of bad politics disability.
Elimination of, elimination
Okay.
of disability, therefore. the
Sure.
information.
The link below that, the Zavid Sandos link, I want to understand what the argument is here also.
Yes, Spence.
Is this, when you're saying the link,
Or sorry, the card above the alt. The app seeks to mitigate dependence by offering more favorable exchange rates.
oh, yeah, this is our critique of both Marxism and capitalism. Sanos says that when we construct a problem of labor as one of dependency, it castigates disability.
Dependency.
Yeah.
I guess. Well, okay. Sure. Okay. The alternative. Does it invoke, like, what does it call upon for workers, or nothing? Like, should
Refusal, the prior question is the generation of alternatives. Again, you're confusing an alternative to the
Okay.
plan text to an alternative to deliberation over the plan.
Okay, I guess should we just not talk about labor then, or what
We
does
should
the
not
vision
talk
of
about your
discourse
plan
look like?
text because all the links will prove its deliberation attempts to mobilize us towards a form of productivism that we will indict.
Okay, are there any, like, what are the good ways to talk about, like, unions, labor, things like that?
Well,
How do
doesn't
we talk
matter,
about it?
irrelevant, because we're not debating this app, we're debating yours, and yours is bad.
Okay, sure. The. Oh, this one? Well, they just said it's okay, they didn't answer that anyway, so it's fine. Okay, the New Deal stuff,
Yeah, New Deal was deeply eugenic, funded
Sure.
insane commissions to
yeah, sure.
put people into asylums. The WPA actually built centers for eugenics that would sterilize disabled people.
Yeah, those sound
1AC has a
fascinating.
deeply nostalgic attachment to it as
Okay.
the better
Okay.
era, the height of labor.
Okay, I
That's
think
bad.
we're good. You want,
Yeah.
10. Okay. 902. Sorry.
No, that's fine.
Wait, I'm sorry, I'm so sorry again. 902. Okay. Alright, 851. 850. Waste time.
Just got the doc. Okay, open it. Okay.
Case K.
Where are you going on case?
Overview and then just like top down the
Okay,
landscape.
that's fine.
Alright, I'm going with Spencer's.
I'm good. Awesome. Sorry. Just confirm it's in
Oh, yeah.
here. Okay. Vote F to inject bargaining into a new legal rights framework. Advantage 1, inequality causes widespread conflicts as market demand and leads expand to keep profits up, making war inevitable. The plan solves economic inequality by returning power to workers through civil rights, ushering in a new legal mechanism that provides workers with the tools of injunctions, fee shifting, and burden shifting. All these solvency mechanisms go cold conceded to the 1NC, which means that the F is at 100. And On advantage 2, the unitary executive theory makes accidental nuclear explosions, pandemics, and pollution are inevitable. Courts are the only branch putting up resistance to Trump, so the app is key to shift enforcement to Article 3 courts that unlocks the use of local right and with Chevron deference gone, courts can restrict Trump's Article 2 powers to harass agencies. On Lubin 26, it's irrelevant. Just saying, white people should file is not a reason that minority workers shouldn't. On the no quorum or the two evidence, neither of them answer the 1AC. The only condition for going to courts is filing within the EOC. 1AC Farhang is clear that Title VII is designed with an antagonistic government in mind. That's the entire point of fee shifting. It enables or shifts the financial burden from corporations onto employees so the government doesn't have to pay for it. Yeah, we get solvency. On the Bondi bad stuff, this is non-unique, and it links to the SQO even more. There's zero articulated link to the app, and why the app makes it more likely. If anything, the app solves because civil rights applies to non-citizens, which protects migrants. On unitary executive theory, this doesn't assume or engage with our nuts and evidence. 96% of Trump cases are going against him in federal district courts because he fired a bunch of DOJ staffers. They are messing up the paperwork to even file appeals in the first place. There's only a risk that the app works. On Crenshaw, the Jeffries v. Harris County community action case ruled that black women could make discrimination claims under both the protected classes of race and sex. Jeffries' employer fired her in retaliation after she called out unlawful actions regarding her promotion. She was awarded full damages and sets a precedent that Title VII can be amended if there are any insufficiencies. Go to the K. Enter. Weigh the implementation of the app versus competitive alternative. A. Clash. Lack of in-depth discussion of the 1AC means we never have substantive debates on labor mobilization that kills survival strategies for activists. And B. Fairness. Mooting the 1AC makes it impossible to be app. They expect fair decision off of the flow, which means fairness must become a priority. And C. Extend 1AC Ditmer. Fiat is a uniquely valuable tool to evaluate policy. Simulations embody and test strategies that interrupt hegemonies of thought, that turns all their cruel pessimism arguments that the neg block is going to go for, because cruel pessimism is uniquely better than, or cruel optimism is better than cruel pessimism because it has at least a chance of fixing this stuff. 2. Permanent both. Civil rights and disability rights are inherently intertwined. Right 23. Disability rights movement is inseparable from the civil rights movement. Both strive for justice and inclusion, influenced by civil rights. Disability rights activists employ similar tactics to the rights movement. Won several key victories that improve lives of people with disabilities. The ADA passed due to organizing efforts. The ADA transformed the lives of millions by ensuring equal rights. Helps to emphasize community-based ownership, reinforce the right to participate and lead independent lives. The rights movement continues to dismantle barriers that requires a multifaceted approach that includes policy reforms and intersectional advocacy. And 3. Past disability activism shows future-oriented policy visions to dismantle ableism and empower disabled communities. Vote 24. Forming a narrative, a normative vision offered one important launchpad to launch, protest, inform, and coordinate utopianism reveals the social dreaming that motivates legislation. Law has historically had a negative impact that dominated, found framework to voice their oppression and how to transcend it. The state both provided hurdles and a way to demand rights, services, and fund active disabled people experience arbitrary decision-making. Activists reverted by focusing on litigation, legislation, and demonstrations. Struggle often involved concrete immediate issues. The ABA, Civil Rights Act, FRA, ADA helped to normalize the assumption that society needed to enable disabled people's access, help shift the legislative focus from erasing to include activists had to become experts in governance. Served on the Massachusetts GCAT. Roberts was a director of DVR. Davis Butler's and human work for the DOE. Many others gained important support and insight from pressuring and transforming institutions because these have such an immediate impact. 4, I'll do the link debating here. We don't need to win writ large unions good because the Civil Rights Act allows individuals, including disability activist groups, who can sue for rights outside of unions, which solves all their offense about union focus. But right now, workers have to sue together through the NLRB because of unions. The app solves and can bystep that through individual lawsuits and that turns and solves all their links. But specifically on the productivity link, you can no link and turn it at best. Those standards exist now, and the app does not make them worse. The app makes those who suffer under them better because they can win cases. There's only a 1% risk when we both theorize about uniqueness, and we are winning that unions and lawsuits are inevitable, which means there's only a chance the app solves. On the New Deal nostalgia, there's no link and link turn. Yes, some aspects of the New Deal policy were not good, but our argument is not that we should turn back the clock to a more ableist time, but instead that we should propel unions and individual workers, including disabled workers, who can use the app to beat corporations. The historiography of the 1AC proves that our conception of history is always morphing. There's no historical tie. We just look that labor was strong then. On the narrative prosthesis, there is no link. Just saying the word anxious is not demonizing those who are anxious per their cross-explanation, and the card read above proves that impacts are now and require action now. Instead, Wilder is saying that thinking through pessimistic frames is depoliticizing and causes bad conclusions, and we should orient towards optimism even if it seems bad. On the dependence link, you can no link and turn this. Past issues of Marxist organizing, this card flows app. Literally says overaccumulation justifies productivity standards to mark bodies as disposable. The app is an intervention into checking authoritarianism. 5. Only the plan guarantees durable rights for workers with disabilities. This link turns Rosenthal 21. Brown 24. Union representation is associated with skip Brown, go to 6. By narrowly focusing on identity, the alternative mirrors neoliberal strategies that erase the material struggles of the injured and disabled workers. Heat 24. Injured workers are neglected in critical disability studies. CDS tends to avoid a class analysis of disability politics in favor of identitarian approaches. Injured workers experience disability as a loss worthy of compensation rather than a positive identity. Injured workers support the prevention of disability through safety laws and workplace practices. Neoliberalism has created a convergence of interest between injured workers and other disabled people. And 7. Theorizing disability as outside the schema of neoliberal values, a historical Bingham 20. Capitalism has historically categorized the disabled body as unproductive. Difference has itself become value far from threatening production and countering difference to generate valuable new avenues and extends their commodification of social life. And 8. Material oppression structures and impacts. The alternative is ivory tower theorizing that cannot solve the links. Barnes 12. Shift from the forces in creation of disablement towards a benign focus on discourse, generating a totalizing theory that excludes disabled people's lived experiences. Accounts downplay material reality, provide no insight into how the problem might be resolved. In policy or politics, activists are rendered inconceivable. People might as well lie down to discrimination. Research is apolitical and concerned with defining rather than oppression remain unchecked. We need policies to address disableism and contribute the struggle for change. To shy away and focus on abstract theorizing that has no relevance beyond the university will demise meaningful discipline. And 9. Conditional Ks are bad. You get infinite counterplans, but support of critical movements necessitates unconditional support. Anything else creates technocratic debaters and trains people like Ted Cruz. They violate when they say things like the status quo is always an option. 10. Permanent both legal mechanisms remedying inequities faced by disabled workers. Salvo et al. 25. In recent decades, more than 24 states and localities have worked to phase out sub-minimum wage work. States that have repealed 14C haven't seen a decrease in labor force participation among workers with intellectual disabilities. In additional states began phasing out or disincentivizing 14C programs. Texas passed a bill making it illegal for business to pay their disabled workers below the minimum wage. California created a transition plan and put funding toward helping disabled workers at 14C programs find competitive integrated employment. Other states used regulations and funding to implement an employment first framework that holds all people are capable of working in competitive integrated employment, raising the minimum wage benefits disabled workers who make up a disproportionate share of workers in low-wage jobs. And 11. Only the perm solves wage and welfare cuts hit unions and disability activism alike, so joint action is the key. Bargains Joe 17. Unionization serves people with disabilities by stemming the turnover. Reduced turnover is exactly what we have seen in states that providing collective bargaining rights, increased wages as an occasion for increased investment has been a win-win as a pragmatic matter. The disability rights advocates should favor worker protection. Disability rights recognize public services are crucial to integration and empowerment. We live in an era of austerity. Disability rights advocates need allies. Unions can be important to defend and enhance spending on Medicaid. When disability rights advocates defend the rights of workers, that cements an alliance to defend and expand. The answer to limited resources is not for disability and activists in labor to fight over allocation. The only answer is political activism that will increase resources the state devotes to community-based services. The only way to engage in successful advocacy is for people with disabilities in the labor movement to work together. Top level, the neg has to win that Amazon winning more cases is net better. Because we're winning a uniqueness question on unions and cases existing, the app is uniquely necessary to restrict corporations.
Cool. Good. Cool. Quick question on framework. You said simulations of hegemony interrupt hegemonic thought. How?
Simulations of thought simulations interrupt hegemonic
how?
thought. Hegemonic thought, right? Capitalism kind of ingrains itself and says, oh, all these things are normal. Thought experiments push past that and allow us to conceive of a world that we might not normatively think of.
Yeah, and why is that good?
Because it can push past kind of entrenched systems of systemic violence.
I guess more I'm asking what does that lead to?
We think that it leads to a way to conceive of a world beyond the one that we are stuck in now, right? It is a key to, fiat is uniquely key for revolutionary testing.
Key for rev testing. Okay. If we win that the app is not counter-hegemonic, do we win the debate?
No.
No, you just said the benefits of our debate is it lets us push into these radical futures. If we win your app, is it a radical future? Do we win?
Well, that's just fiat. We can still win that our app is good elsewhere, right? I don't think that's the win-con for the app.
Second question, on that then, if fiat is only valuable insofar as it can allow us to imagine revolutionary things. How does your app access that offense if we when it isn't revolutionary? Why is that offense for you?
I'm
Your warrant for the
Sorry,
argument
yes.
was fiat good because revolutionary stuff.
Yeah.
Then you said we actually don't have to win. The app is revolutionary.
That's just a reason that fiat is good. The app can be
Okay. So
independent
if we
of.
want to link, you don't get that offense. Cool. Next question on the Sue evidence. What piece of 1AC evidence have you read that makes you think Title VII doesn't require people go through the EEOC?
No. It's not that people. We agree that you have to file, but the argument about like, oh, the EEOC will hate people. It just needs to be in their database, and then you go to civil courts.
It requires the EEOC to take the civil court. That's 1AC cross-ex.
No. You
Oh.
file is the precondition that like initiates. It's like okay, you have to enter it into the database. After that, the private right of action enables you to hire a private lawyer who Amazon will then have to pay for.
If somebody counterfiles, how does the court make a determination of which Sue?
What do you mean by counterfile?
Like, how does the court adjudicate civil rights cases against each other?
I'm confused about what that means.
Okay.
Like
If
more
somebody
specific.
files a civil rights suit,
Yeah.
And it's
somebody
like,
can file one back against it, right?
like you sued against worker, like you're like, my rights are violated because I'm a worker who, for example, was not able to access like I wasn't able to put my pronouns in my email signature, and somebody else is like, well, I'm transphobic and you violated my rights to gender equality. How
That
under which is
is
a civil
not
right? How do courts adjudicate two competing civil rights claims against each other on the same issue?
I don't think that analogy is specific to
No,
what
it's
the
not
app
an analogy.
is about
It's a
because
scenario about solvency.
no, it's a scenario of
Okay.
the only countersuit would be Amazon countersuing workers, which isn't
Wait,
possible
why is that true?
because that's what the app does. It
Okay.
extends collective bargaining.
That's fine. 10 minutes starting.
Sorry.
You do?
Yeah.
I have two things here.
Stop prep 7:53.
Look at my message that will stop that.
Oh, okay, sorry. Continue prep at 7:53 for 1 second. Alright. Sorry. I'm getting close. Complete. Stop prep. Alright, 7:46. There we go. Okay.
I have a quick question. Would I be able to get on the email chain? Because I think whenever you made me one.
Oh, have you not?
Yes. What's your email?
It's on that piece.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that. I think I played about it. Maybe that good. Maybe I mistyped.
Okay.
Sorry. I
Sorry, I got the first one, but I think they didn't.
Oh.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, yeah. There you go.
I'm gonna go fill my water bottle then in the meantime.
I'm also going to additionally forward this all to you so that you can see it.
Thank you.
Oh wait, it says it's not found. Can you just spell it out for me like quickly, I guess?
Yeah, it's J-E-C-K, Celine, B-A-L-L-I-N-G-E-R, 067
At Gmail.
@gmail.com.
Oh, I was reading this as 007. Fair enough. Okay. So forward it all to you, and I'll hit on this one, apply all, and I will add you.
It would have been highly unprofessional and immature if I'd gone 6'7". But you did beat me.
I was also tempted.
I made that like 4 years ago.
Okay, maybe you started it.
Okay.
Sorry, it just gets me every time. It's good and practical, wonderful, and conceptually funny. Alright, I'm gonna give this speech.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I thought you were talking about 6'7", and I was like a little confused. Why that would be the case.
Alright, you just wanna like switch chairs. So you're close. No. You're fine.
I see two. Oh, is it just the resend?
Yeah, we had a problem getting
Just
the
adding
wrong
them.
page, yeah. Let's see how my kids are doing. Oh, look, the one I just made, that's good. Okay.
What tournament is this weekend?
Huh?
Was the high school tournament actually?
They're in like UNLV. I don't know
Oh,
why they chose to go there, but like they made their own tournament schedule. One of them worked all summer to like pay for tournaments, and
Okay.
if she wants to spend her money going to Las Vegas, that is her prerogative. Case and then the critique.
Wait, is that the reason? It's because it's Las Vegas?
I kind of think so, because that's how it was explained. She also thinks it would be easier, but now she's debating Bodyguard, which is a big fear, so.
I can
You
see
get
it
what
when
you get,
it's,
you know?
when it's on Super Bowl weekend and you have a bunch of
Yeah.
drunk football fans with high schoolers.
And debating Butchart in Las Vegas?
Yes.
That seems itself like really alienating and
Yeah.
disembodying.
Tyler was telling us about an app he cut for Las Vegas in high school that was just about Las Vegas.
Wait, seriously?
Yeah,
Dude, I didn't hear that. Are you joking?
I'm dead.
That's so funny. Okay. Okay, it's case in the cake. Yeah.
Yep, have
cards
the
are
doc. I am good.
Okay. Okay. Normal means conceded. Our interpretation is that the app gets to fiat the plan and the NEG cannot say it gets rolled back, but can make arguments about non-enforcement. Under this interpretation, they get the fiat that collective bargaining rights becomes protected as a civil rights violation and becomes litigated as such. They do not get to fiat the outcome of individual cases, nor what cases are okayed as being under that scope. There are three standards. One is it's real world. They said it matters. Anything else idealizes, which crushes exploitation. Two is Trump. All lit assumes him. He uses loopholes in the text of the law, which he will use in the text of the plan as well. Three, their framework. They said plain text matters. Are in any other interpretation, a normal means double turns that. Now, I will extend the interpretation. The normal means debate proper. Civil rights cases start at the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission, which is under the DOJ, but they must get approval there to get litigated. 2 layers, 0 solvency. First, the EEOC. A subpoint, they're not functional. That is 1C. Sue. It proves members are insta-fired and replaced with Trump cronies insofar as they make liberatory decisions. B subpoint, insofar as they are functional, they will make fucked up rulings. 1. Reverse racism. 1C. Lucas proves they weaponize collective bargaining rights to do things like protect ICE and cops for brutal murders by litigating as reverse racism cases like anti-white discrimination. 2. Anti-trans discrimination. 1C. Sue proves they'll weaponize the plan to attack Trump's enemies for employment discrimination like pronouns and email signatures, calling that a hostile work environment that violates union agreements. The EEOC then relays cases to the DOJ. This is the second level of circumvention. It is headed by Pam Bondi, who gatekeeps litigation. 2 problems there. A subpoint. She says no. Extend 1C. Dan proves Bondi just won't litigate them. She was trained in the most pro-employee and corporation firm in the country, which flips the direction of their Amazon arguments. Remember, this is not the status quo, but they make it, means it's offense. 2. If she says yes, she will I think this is actually B subpoint. If she says yes, she will selectively litigate it in ways that favor racism, specifically anti-migrant sentiment, which is why she cuts funding to sanctuary studies. Solvency for cross-ex is perception of big penalty from corporations. 3 problems. 1. Companies are very aware of what the administration will do. Trump explicitly says he'll use civil rights to go after companies for reverse racism, which means that companies are not scared. 2. EEOC, then DOJ has to sign off on litigating all above, all a prerequisite
prerequisite. 2, company gets big punishment. 3, companies will just take it to mediation instead of punishment in courts. That's Lubin got solvency. Normal means is not the unitary executive theory. Second advantage is dead. Giving power to Article 3 courts guarantees unrestrained executive power. They make it worse. This is offense. I just want to see Dodds. Normal means the app overturns it, will be new in the 1 year, and will be a lie. Congress can't overturn court decisions. The court won't overturn it anyway. They'll use every ruling they can to expend presidential power in every way, which answers this 97% argument. Minsky 25. It was not that long ago the unitary executive theory was rejected by Rehnquist. The court current majority seems ready to undo Rehnquist's work and to embrace Scalia's attack, calling for a more powerful presidency. K. Infrastructural violence makes eugenics the necessary backdrop of our political deliberation by catching life between productivist ideologies and the disavowal of dependency as demands of colonial racial capitalism. At the end of this debate, the question you should ask is who becomes the living infrastructure for NYU's fantasy of independence? 1 and C. Kim says they're rights-based to be able to restore markets to productivity against corporations and integrates ableism in 2 ways. 1, debilitation, positing labor as redemptive, relies on eugenics to enforce mass complacency with the wage. Those who fail to meet production standards of the so-called average worker are pushed into informal economies, incarcerated in silence in prisons, and subject to sterilization. That's Rosenthal. 2 is classification. The affirmative grants disabled people the right to work themselves to death. Rights disavow dependency by heroicizing the individual resilient subject who can pull themselves up by the bootstrap to sell their labor on markets and then sue when they can't, which is why labor reform is disavowed. Underside is the intensified exploitation of undocumented workers paid under the table, creation of work for programs, and the carving out of exemptions to minimum wage laws for incarcerated and disabled people. The demand for productivity can only valorize life insofar as it can engage in reciprocal exchange in a competitive marketplace, which gets mirrored in debates through the demand to produce political solutions that are legible to eugenic policymakers and ultimately rescue the market from its own contradictions, like corporations becoming too powerful. Now, 2AC1 is framework. It will be the 1 and R. 2AC2 is the permutation do both, which is the right evidence. This begs the question of the link. So I'll do the New Deal nostalgia link here. The 1AC as the 1AC wants to return to the era of the New Deal. Their mode of fiat is a nostalgic one, not utopian, not a utopian imaginary, but a return to the form of the New Deal. But the 1AC evidence elaborates. Sorry, pause my time. My mouse is broken and it thinks that I am holding down, like when I'm scrolling, it thinks that I'm holding down the control key. Hang on. Let's see. That seems bad.
The 1156 alarm.
Yeah, I'm not saying.
Oh.
No, it says.
Oh,
yeah.
oh no. Okay. Why would it begin this? Okay.
You need to just fire this plugin on.
That won't work for me. 1 second. Ooh, now it's like doing all kinds of crazy things. You guys, this is actually bad. Okay.
You guys added like a technical difficulties thing when you.
I have a button on here that pulls down the control key, and I forgot which one it is. This might be a physical problem with this mouse. Ooh, Tessa, this is bad.
Who needs my mouse?
Yeah, but I'm just saying we might have to fix this problem for other players, because low-key, I'm kind of mouse blind. Okay, but the problem is that I don't have a USB-C.
You don't have USB, you mean?
Yeah.
I might have USB-C to USB dongle. Let me check if I. It's like kind of filthy, but it might work. Sorry about it being gross.
No.
Anyways,
Mouse.
does that work?
Let's find out.
Plug that in, plug this in that.
I wonder if it's
Yeah, of course.
Wait, no, hang on. This isn't working because the same problem is happening. I think it's a problem with the computer right now, so I'm gonna restart it. That's weird. Guys, that is not good. Okay. I'm scared. I'm about to message Tommy and be like, hey man, you know when you said you got those extra computers, can I have one?
Well, if you drop the dock in the Discord, you can use my computer.
Let me see if this turns back on. Yeah.
Did y'all fly or drive from Iowa?
Oh, fly. A
Fly.
drive from Iowa?
I was. What would that be, like 18?
More than that.
More. Okay.
We had to wake up at 2 for our flight.
Yeah, well, I woke up at,
Like Friday morning, I assume?
Yes.
Yeah.
I woke up at 3:05, which was,
What time should you land here? Like early?
No, we got here at 2 p.m.
Oh, like drive to the
12
airport.
hour.
no, we just had a ridiculous layover for no reason.
I will say the layover was only helpful
Okay,
so far as like in the Atlanta airport you can rent rooms for an hour. So I paid more than I necessarily wanted to for an hour.
well, you split it with another video, which is nice. Okay, well now it's updating Word, which is a bad possibility. Okay, let's see. I was blaming the mouse all that time. Okay, that's so good that it's not a mouse problem. Probably not great that it's a computer problem, but I think, let me get everything open back up and then I think we're good. 2:1 seems good. Thank y'all for helping the mouse offers. Okay. Okay. It appears to me that things are in working order. Well, people are scared. Okay.
Good.
Okay, yeah, I'll just start on 2AC2.
Alright, sorry, how much do you have?
I had 509 remaining.
Okay, good.
Everybody good? Yeah, perfect, okay. 2AC2 is the perm. This is the right evidence begs the question. The link still to the New Deal nostalgia link here. The 1AC wants to return to the era of the New Deal. Their mode of fiat is a nostalgic one. It is not a forward fight, and this is not like a forward-looking one, but a return to the form of the New Deal. Their 1AC evidence ties this return to the New Deal to their version of fiat, which their card defends as evolutionary psychology. The way that their authors explain it, play is an infrastructure designed to eliminate disability through a survival of the fittest style logic that abuses the correct, quote, behavior and physiology. 1AC Dittmer 15 says, quote, in evolutionary theory, play contributes to development of behavior and physiology as well as cognitive emotional stability. Play prepares bodies for future action, codes new pathways between muscles, brain, and nervous system, enhancing capabilities for action, which proves that their arguments about fiat and the AF being good are written in the nostalgic language of return to the New Deal, which means that we have a link both to the content of that nostalgia and to its form. This is what Gray is gesturing to in 1AC Cross-X. During the New Deal, well fit young Americans got to work. Disabled people were sent to poor farms to do labor under the guise of rehabilitation, which actually looked more like prisons. Its solution was not to disabled people who didn't have access to the family wage, was mass incarceration in the form of things like insane commissions, which is why the WPA literally was employed to build them. They provided a solution to disability in the form of incarceration into prisons and asylums, which is exactly what our Rodents Law evidence predicts. They built public projects by bulldozing black neighborhoods, redlined and privatized things that were in white neighborhoods that were not exponential, that were not subject, and ugly laws persisted through the New Deal and weren't repealed until 1974, which proved the act to revive the middle class, draws on the nostalgic feeling for a return to the golden age of capital, and sanitizes the infrastructural violence that it requires. But even if they win their framework, then this is still this turns case under theirs, because collective bargaining rights through the law was counterinsurgency, shuts down bottom-up struggle. 1NC, or actually this is just Gil Peterson. 23, the New Deal is trying to accomplish stopping Wildcat strikes to just sit down on the top and stop working was devastating to the economy. It was really scary. Wildcat strikes to business and government. So if you're formally union is way to check that power now. The permutation proper links or dissats is done above. Second answer is that links are not that disabled people are excluded, but how violent inclusion happens by making disabled people the infrastructure of their politics, which means the justification that you can just use the law is the link. The third is a cost-benefit decide. The form of the permutation requires you to cost-benefit analysis. That is bad. Tammy 21, cost-benefit analysis. Here's a concession. Cost will be a valid reason to say no, that we don't want the decisional framework because it's taken how easy to cross austerity cost narratives, right? Welfare mothers are a prominent example for the obvious question we've unasked to question the disability context. Has in 70s cost asking people to show their worth rather than how they end up in the side ledger that we began with. Fourth is the rights decide. The content of the perm removes coherence for the all by treating it as disability rights and removes the necessary vocabulary to articulate as capital structurally guarantees debilitation. Space 22 rights in liberal capitalist economies must fall short of remedy depression, focus on the struggle of disabled person right to enter for the right to labor rather than right. The labor shape resistance based on understanding disability is socially create a category derived from labor relations to capitalist economic base class disposal, person's specialization, individually based, removes coherence from political practice. Even the most military organization takes for granted existing economic relations, imagining a world where marginalized get giving those most dominant bodies for jobs in their very most. Now, the third argument is future-oriented policy is good as a vulgar evidence. Ace point, the New Deal link disproves it, and B point, they're wrong about how about the link term disability is never legislated under the Civil Rights Act, only under the ADA, because it is defined by the Social Security Administration as the inability to work, which is why you cannot be both a disabled and a worker under the Civil Rights Act. The ADA was created to fill in the gaps, because you can't sue somebody under the Civil Rights Act for being ableist, because being disabled means you're not employed, which means they cannot access the link term. Now, the fourth argument is the app solves for lawsuits over focus on
corporations as the site of violence misses the mark that violence happens in intimate ways in everyday spaces like debate, which is what our critique is about. Fifth argument is that productivity is the status quo and union lawsuits are inevitable. Non-unions all of their offense. So it's a reason about the next argument is about how the can solve for disabled workers can be corporations. This is linked to the stuff I did above. The eighth argument is that answer to Zavatsan knows they say authoritarianism. This authoritarianism is not the only bad thing that can happen. Okay, or Zavatsan's piece of evidence points to the fact that the focus on like that Marxism too, it has problems with ableism, which will be the second link I will do below. The ninth argument is narrow focus on identity is bad. Okay, one, this is a link to all of their arguments and link terms. The rights in the ADA and civil rights legislation can only cohere disability as a legally sanctioned identity, but two, link turn the critique solves because it apprehends disability in those ways that are not apprehended by the official labels of disability, which means that only we can solve this offense, and it is just offense for us against them. 10th argument is ableism comes from capitalism. This is our bingham card. Yes, but insofar as it's true, social democracies are not sufficient to solve it, which is why I will do the dark triad link. Actually, I probably won't. I will save that link for the 1 and R. You're taking the second link. Okay, the 11th, but you should cross by that link there, leave space on your flow because it will answer this. The 11th argument is materiality key. Anything else is ivory tower. 1, link turn. Fiat is more ivory tower. This is all litigated on the case made. They jump past the real world, like red tape and barriers that actors have to implementation. 12th argument is that condo is bad. 1, we are not condo. We said if we go for the K, we go for the alt, and then I jumped in and said, quote, we're going for the K, but their term is bad. It creates unconditional commitment to things that even ends after they've been criticized and proven as bad, which is worse. The 13th argument is perm both because legalism solves. It was done above. I read a Dean card on this. The 14th argument is only the perm can solve. This is the against us card. This says that unions can solve for austerity, but the links filter whether or not they will. It is much more likely that disabled workers. The 15th argument is the must win that Amazon is better. No, we are the negative. All we have to win is the reading of the 1AC was bad. I'm good for process.
I wanted, you good? Rights disad spade card, talks about, rights that are, the right to enter the labor force and, just labor is highlighted. Why is the AF the right to enter the labor force?
So it's not exactly, so it extends past the right to enter the labor force. Dean Spade is making a broader critique of coalescing around the identity of disability as a locus for redress, because it cannot attend to the way that disability is a position that is structurally created and guaranteed by capital.
Coalescing around disability as the site of redress. Why does the K not do that?
Because it does not apprehend disability in the way that things like the ADA or the Civil Rights Act do.
It does not apprehend disability. What does that
Yeah,
mean?
because I said it at the top of the 2NC, disability is not an identity category. It is a structural position of debilitation and the infrastructure of the world.
Okay.
Which does not mean that we cannot point out the way that, structural things like eugenics come to matter and implicate disabled people, but it also implicates disabled people who are not under the label of disabled, which is why we talked about exploitation of undocumented workers,
but I guess
welfare programs, etc.
Okay, that part makes sense. Why? But back to the first question: why is the AF a right to enter the labor force? Because that's what this card seems to be talking about.
I answered that. I said that premise is wrong. Dean Spade is making a broader critique, and then I explained that. So
but it says that it fails because
but
it does not solve the problem. Why is the AF that?
It does not solve the problem because Dean Spade is making an argument that the structures of accumulation and markets themselves produce eugenic imperatives, because disability is seen as a site of non-production, which is also Arzabasana's evidence.
Okay.
Social democracy, however, I'll be very clear, because one will be like, oh, we solved the card because we're social democracy, and that's different than capitalism. Wrong. We read 2 pieces of evidence. Arzabasana's and the one in got me evidence.
Other question.
Which Gray will extend on the other link.
Fiat, you talk about red tape. Why does the alt not engage in the same part of kind of moving past entrenched structures? If we're doing if you've made a ton of analysis that says the world is really messed up,
because the alt is not an alt, because our links are not to plan if past would be bad. Our links are to your scholarship was bad in this debate, which means the alt is not an alternative to passage of plan. It is an alternative to deliberation over the 1AC in this debate.
Okay. The top of the 2NC, you say the AF pushes workers into informal economies. What's the link to that?
This is a theory of power argument.
Right. But where does the AF engage in that?
The 1AC has said that the thing we coalesce around is workers who come to constrain
But I
corporations.
feel like we need an example of what that informal economy is.
Things like, I don't know, like things outside of formal labor markets.
Okay.
Like
Not what that is.
things like, I don't know, like
Modes of give and give, take and take that are done by disabled people and done through
Okay.
like the structural process of enablement and disablement. We can never be called labor. Yeah, I got the right version of that one.
you got it, Never?
yeah.
Okay.
Cool. One of ours is gonna be set in like 2 seconds. Alright. One of ours sent orders K, but in the order of like the second link.
I flagged this on the Bingham 20 card, so that's where it could be flowed unless there's no space in the flow.
And then framework and all.
Sorry, there was a doctor.
Give me 1 second.
Sorry, we're gonna take like 3 seconds perhaps once I get back to Spencer. This is correct?
Wait. Correct. Yeah.
Alright, that was 6 seconds, so whatever we had minus 6.
I don't know.
740. That's Alright, anyone not good?
Wait, hang on. Actually, sorry. No, yeah, we're good. We're sorry. Got it.
First, the link. The app locates the harm of authoritarianism and disability, which marks it for elimination. That's why their evidence is like Trump is bad because it's disabled. When we see Carrington says, quote, civilization's threat from leaders who are walking versions of the dark triad, narcissism, psychopathy. The 3 most powerful men in the world are a walking version of the dark triad. Trump is a textbook narcissist. Putin is a cold psychopath, and Xi Jinping came to rule China by being a master Machiavellian manipulator. The conclusion is our evidence explicitly connects us to the eugenics through line of you're not human if you're disabled. This sanitizes eliminationism and becomes a slippery slope. This is why our 1C Gabi evidence tells you to pay attention to the slippage of eugenic beliefs that animate social democratic states. They locate the health of the people and the health of the nation. When implicated, when Carrington says, quote, these types of people, it is not human nature. We're naturally a social, altruistic species, and we all have anti-dominance intuition. This is what we're built for. This link filters out ways the link turns since 1C Gabi says, quote, there's nothing radical about a progressive welfare state because it's reliant on the elimination of disability, which is seen as a threat to it. Remember that the reading of the app has no consequence at the level of the plan's passage, but it does have consequences for people in this room. That's bad. But if we lose our framework, something still turns case. Scapegoating disability sanitize the actual violence of administration, which guarantees it escalates. Koki 20. News discussing Britain's help push the hashtag Trump is not well. Dismissing Trump's matter is a major mistake. Able's and hurts people's disabilities. Mistakes with disabled people long afterwards. It has a serious effect on how people's disabilities are treated in real life. Still, it seems easier to argue for the removal of president based on perceived disability. Able's makes it easy to argue that someone is a failure because they're disabled, not because they're evil, unethical, and unqualified. Believing that the worst parts of Trump's presidency on disability lets him off the hook. Framing issue. Debate isn't a site of instrumental policymaking, but a site of rhetorical exchange. Therefore, our counter-interpretation is evaluate Doisy as a political, affective, and research artifact. Invoke negative if we want to link to their imaginary or the epistemic orientations that sustain it. The most important argument on framework that Doisy cross-sects concedes our interpret when they say the language in the app matters just as much as its consequences, which means they give us our way our links claims, and they can't sever their imaginary from any other reason they might want to justify the plan. The net benefit is the reorganization of dependency. Their interpretation is built on an infrastructure of unquestioned productivity. One sees Avistano says interdependence is inevitable. The fantasy of perfect rejoinder as exchange requires the disavowal of interdependence. Their model presumes you're a flow machine, not a human, making you the infrastructure of this debate. You can never write fast enough to catch every word we say, but they want you to. That proves your relationship to capacity comes prior to your ability to adjudicate the round, so our impact sequence fairness. You should evaluate this debate as someone with a body. Don't discount your investments in politics, your body, your life, in the room to present a fantasy of fairness that requires we eliminate difference and capacity towards productivity. And no middle ground. You won't decide the F gets the F and the neg gets K. It's arbitrary, interventionist, de facto grants them their model since it looks like an app bound on extinction ways every time, which was our argument about how violent infrastructures inevitabilize the sacrifice of some for others. Now, we have 4 dissets to the model. First is universal capacity DAs. The idea that we should produce what essentially comes to a counterplan assumes a universal field of capacity in which all subjects are inclined towards the same labors, which is how disablement becomes articulated as lacking disposal and capable of being excised, indicated through the ways of plan versus competitive all. There are interpolarized and predictable limits to the internal links of both fairness and clash. I'll do defense here. First, app choice solves. Infinite prep means links are unforced errors that flips the internal link because only NYU could predict what scholarship they chose to read in the 1AC. 2, resolution guarantees the KFDI comes from should, and the resolution means our KFDI is core ground and can do a state's counterpoint. 3, wit check. Savistano says epistemic interrogation disabilities inseparable from labor, so they're arbitrarily limits out core topic lit. And 4, proximity filters. 2 link debate made a substantive critique of grounding premise of the app with deep engagement across our evidence. Proves we're not unpredictable or arbitrary. Think about this like a reasonability argument. Even if another debate could use our interpret 100 word picks, that's the problem for that judge in that debate, not you in this one. I mean, second, we have resiliency DA. 2AC said rejoining the app is good because it will give them the skills to refine arguments. We have impact from that because it makes them better rhetorically outflanking dissent. There's an external overcoming impact. They've said we should simply get over the ableist premise of the app and use speech time to convince them that disabled people matter. That sequence is clash because even if we could overcome the eugenic violence of the app, that's not true of all disabled people who couldn't and are not here to render that criticism. And means third, we have a denied relationality DA. It's a demand that we evaluate research, evaluate the value of our knowledge through the utility it provides to a hypothetical future, writes out forms of disabled knowledge that exceed and precede the theoretical registers of fiat. This naturalizes quarantine of disabled knowledge out of academic legitimacy. Obvious down to March 1924. Disability code and social practice show a relationship to proof, where you learn by doing. Somebody shows you the demonstrative relationship with evidence. You're not going to believe if I tell you, so I have to show you. Engagement in studies often cited immaterial is more literal. Now, they had one justification for their model of past fairness, and that is the fiat argument. Their wilder evidence does not find a warrant for fiat being good. Rather, it says that, quote, by treating the president as an unsurpassable debater, they're, quote, delusional. That reason they give to structural links and call our clash not worth it is eugenic current. That is because it's scripted as disabled, it's got to go. That's one in Wilder 17 for reference. Their only other justification to defend the game through evolutionary science, which redeems gender roles as spaces of improvisation. They use their model replicates a civilizational imperative which you should refuse to endorse because even if debate is a game, it's merely a violent game. As such, that was in the 2C. Now, additionally, they can't go for fiat good if we win their imaginary they're bad, clash proper, defense largely above, no skills or resiliency, debate can't chase up securities irrelevant, and never maximize if we win that. It justifies morally representable positions. Now, fairness proper, 1, paradox wrong, drinking water is universal precondition, doesn't tail maximize, 2, turn, less favor, reduce a 9-minute speech, 3, second plan text, and 3, Bow can't solve, can't do the one, undo the one in C, but it can reject only C productive infrastructure. All. Remember, interdependence is inevitable. It's a question of how it's organized. That means you have a choice between denying that interdependence and re-bracketing the debate space with the violent infrastructures that deny that dependency, or giving into the access that seems of work a better and more hegemonic, anti-hegemonic imaginary outside of the productivism that they impose within this debate. They had 2 arguments responsive to the alt. First is the identity focus bad. Kim says it's not about identity, it's about infrastructure, and this card double turns itself because it says there are distinct categories. Now, the ivory tower spends her handle on the 2 and C, even then it's about the social model, not the affirmative, which means in this debate, refusal only sees a capacitation or ballot to affirm an untenable status quo of productivism and strategically divest from the hybrid capacitation that they ask of you.
Okay, 851.
looking for a doc or no?
No doc. The order is just the case of okay. Have you just been flood case on one page, Vincent?
I've put the overviews on the advantages and then everything else is on solvency. So
Okay.
I don't know.
Makes sense. Alright, I'll just solve.
But like, yeah, you just tell me and I'll
Okay.
just figure it out.
Sure. Everyone good? Advantage 1, inequality causes external comedy to market expansion, giving workers legal tools, the injunctions need to be emerged and solved. Advantage 2, the user exec theory enables an unbounded Trump, average dealings response capacity, nuclear misfile dependent pollution, all drop the afterlife of ALJs, which unlocks ability for courts to use lower right drives executive authority. Okay, solvency. 1C, one normal means not conceded. 1C proves not that we have evidence that predicts the outcome of the app and answers the real world standard. Courts rule against Trump now. It's not, again the next argument about civil rights case at the EU. I think they're extrapolating words that aren't there in their app. The 1C evidence just said that Trump is a DEI or that they can't make policy changes that neither are required for the app or the function. The block dropped 2C now about how the foreign evidence is designed with antagonistic government in mind. The next argument was about how it's not functional. There's no word for CBA key means no app link, and we don't need Pam Body to adjudicate the whole point of the app about a private right to action. Pam is the one that litigates private action anyway. It means workers hire their own lawyers. State capacity are irrelevant, and federal discourse are sufficient to solve, which enters the company stuff. We also get advantage, advantage 2. It's about shifting Article 2 power to Article 3. There's no answers in the block to this, so they can't just say we don't get it for no warrant. And the UET Cheminsky stuff, there's no warrant that answers 2AC specificity. Anything kind of cases are against Trump. He's too polarizing, overcomes their warrants. Anything else? Here, ableism. Or the critique. 2AC wanted to enter where the inflationary planners plan alternative solves all their offers. They get their all, we get the app. Their framework offense was all as if we said framework no case, which we did not. Now, debate the first argument about on framework, our terminal state is good, our argument concepts that our language and what the effects of the plan matter. Just starting one is infinitely regressive and functionally a word pick. These frame arguments also don't make sense since their entry cannot solve these either. The universal capacity DA, no link. We do not assume universal capacity, just that we should think about the strategies to solve things like ableism. And aspects that solve these are there's infinite K-lit basis of propaganda, which makes it impossible and turns other often. There's DDA, no link, and link turn their skills. Deep clash is key to it, so we actually debate about combating the best strategies for challenging ableism in the first place. Their model eviscerates that. And our knowledge does not produce ableism independently. Yes, Warren, the Wilder stuff says the world gets better. Wilder does not mean delusional in the ableist way, but that world appears to get better, i.e. life expectancy, which no links out of the offense. Also, we solve the salational imperative argument. The one sees the history of how the market evolves and improved by condition improvements is uniquely key, which enters the fiat bad stuff. And yes, fairness paradox is not about precondition, but that to evaluate an argument requires you to evaluate it fairly, which means you have to assume fairness comes a priori. Now, a second class fairness key. Only arguments of pedagogical value of by parsing skills development, getting sci-fi so we learn to combat ableism, they're kill classification because we can't figure out the solutions. Fiat is good, allows us to imagine the input of our politics to determine if they're good. Endlessly theorizing if our reps are good is an infinite ivory tower leads them to which churns the K. Only the privileged can theorize. It's also not illusory. Our skills in here can spill up. 2AC, perfectly both. I'll send it here. Right 23 says civil rights and civil rights work best together. Movements from both groups learn from each other, and the ADA was a victory built on the legacy of the civil rights movement, which solves their link we're going to do later. Intersectional lens are key, otherwise the movement kills the all. And case turns the K. Over here at the top, you both things like that. Things that ableist what's happening right now is only that giving workers the power to sue corporation checks back at the ableist eugenics. Also, the app solves Kim, and these are the apps about restricting corporate power to export violence. Caution cannot tell you what the informal economy is or how the app increases that, which means there's no risk of a link. Also, the stuff about how violence is happening right now, arguments that authoritarianism and Trump all embolden and turn and make ableism net worth means we're winning a solid kingdom and only the app solves the K. Okay, the right link. Wrong, not a return. The 1C historiography is an analysis of the when labor was strong specifically due to courts enabling worker power to contest power. It's like the 1C Lewis setting the example of Hague versus Congress and industrial organizations. The court for the First Amendment and declared the First Amendment protected the right of labor relations to hold meeting protected from police surveillance. And this link does not turn case. Yes, the law has been a site counterregime in the past, but that doesn't mean it always will. And we have to retake it by endorsing the affirmative. I said it right above, but links are not DAs to the perms. We win the perms, all of them. Not all cost benefits are eugenic. Cost analysis can be useful for determining what are the most effective solutions to things like ableism, which proves it's this. You can't holistically claim they're all bad. Also, we don't use cost benefit analysis. If the perm is good, you should vote for it, independent of cost benefit analysis. No rights, we haven't reduced disability rights, but obviously they have no game on the fact that the rights are good for disabled people and key, which they have no offense on. And we don't reduce it. It's a question of how you correct for ableism right now. The future-oriented politics New Deal stuff was answered on the Crenshaw Jeffrey stuff on the 2AC, proof that there's a capacity for intellectual cases that the case set. Also, the framework of civil rights is key in fixing the issue of the ADA. The ADA's requirements of proving reasonable accommodation. The app solved that. The app opened the possibility of fixing that standard. Overflows of corporation is good. The plan also isn't that corporations exist and are weakening unions, which means questioning about how we strengthen unions is key. It's not over-focused. Okay, the authoritarianism stuff. I said authoritarianism is not the only bad thing now. The downside at the top about how authoritarianism leads to things like eugenics turns that argument. Now, okay, 2C6, Keith. And to the theory of power and ontology, he says that it focuses on purely on the identity category of disability represents a neoliberal ratio of injured workers who are crucial because of valuable things like safety laws. Only our theory solves. Okay, the Trump dark triad link, authoritarianism is violent, Trump's violence turns decay by enacting mass violence on stable communities, and the argument about how they realize some of our words, they have to win that our intent with language is intentional, there's no scapegoating and disability. Obviously, we did not mean, like, calling authoritarianism bad does not imply that we're rectifying these things in an ableist context. I.e., the things that we need to check and figure out. I.e., there's violence from authoritarian fashions that we have to analyze. If we fail to analyze them, we will all suffer more under them, which will mass turn to ableism. Now, through these evidence of the Bingham evidence, and the claim productivity, productivity has become its own source of value under Neoliberalism, straight turns their theory of power, and lens means only we act that lens of Republican capitalism. 2CA with the Barnes evidence is that theory stable people's experience downplays actual solutions, downplays necessary activism, creates endless research without solutions, which is the average power losing idea at the top. Okay, fiat, not average power, I did that again. Getting to imagine the state is universal, over-focused on language is more. And the unions filtering argument, we don't find that all unions are good, just that corporations are bad and ableist. Almost no ink on this. The world of neg is much worse, even if they don't go for actual consequences, just go for reps. Their world literally just allows corporations to keep fucking over unions, fucking over steel people, which is net worse. Okay, the alternative literally said nothing, just that discourse focus is bad, so we win that discourse focus is bad, and we impact on y'all. You can vote after, which means even if they don't go for the alternative, the perm still functions as a combination of our theories. Anything else?
How much time?
27.
Like unions, lawsuits, inevitable.
Yeah, okay, really important for mainstream for all their links. Union lawsuits are inevitable right now. The negative, in the world of the negative, we were just telling to endorse corporations because of fear of representational violence in this round, but our question is what kind of strategies can we produce? I.e., if things like there's over reps is good, it's to create good strategies, which proves that only our interest solves their offense, and only our interest solves our offense also. Again, the framework decides we're all about framework no case, but our framework allows the K. We just think that we should also figure out what the athletes do. We think the athletes do a good thing, so vote out.
K case. Okay, everybody good?
Yep.
Productivity creates an illusion of independence that capacitates some, but that is made possible through the debilitating living infrastructure that enables their affirmative. The link debate is traces scholarly investment in productivity that coheres their justifications for the app and their interpretation of what good debate entails. I will do the dark triad link at the top because this is the one I'm going for. The one I see is located disability is the cause of societal collapse and fascism. This is the one I see got the evidence. It preempts their turn to, but we're social democracy / workers' rights which constrain corporations. Isn't that super cool and radical? Gopi answers decisively no. One I see Carrington says authoritarianism is bad insofar as, quote, Trump is a psychopath and Putin is a narcissist and performs the jump that Gopi warns of as structuring left politics and social democratic societies that marks the health of the people as the health of the nation to eliminate disability. That is precisely why their Carrington evidence concludes that Trump is unnatural and worth eliminating, not because he's racist, but because he's disabled. But it says, quote, these kinds of people are, quote, not human nature. Appeals to this language of evolutionary psychology persist across the affirmative in all of its justifications. When they send the impact scenario that they want you to vote on, you should remember that this card is how they got to extinction. It dovetails with the New Deal link that I won't from the 2NC that I will not extend proper, but I will cross by this highlighting of their piece of evidence because it's justification for their model. It says fiat is good because it corrects, quote, the behavior and physiology of non-game players by rewiring neurons and muscles to make us more productive. You cannot make this shit up. The impact is eugenics. It's justified through evolutionary psychology's language of survival as the fittest. Just like this, it seeks to correct disability out of existence, which spills over and also has impacts on people in this room. The one I had 3 answers to the link. 1, Trump turns the K irrelevant. Our argument is not Trump is good, but rather a much more complex one. The one I see mobilizes around a critique of Trump for being disabled, which fails to constrain him but hurts disabled people. That's the one in our card that gray red on this. 2 is that we must prove their intent. Wrong and bad. Harm can happen without intent for it to. Otherwise, if this is your standard, you should just assume we had no intent to drop any arguments I might undercover or not to solve case. So bracket it and vote negative because I had intent to win this debate and do so perfectly. 3, Trump is really bad. Yes, true, but not because he's disabled. This is a dissad to their interpretation of like how they have justified the affirmative because it overcodes Trump being bad as being disabled, which is like the whole card that was read on it. It is also a turns case argument, so even if we lose the framework debate, then you can still vote on this. Now, the permutation, it will probably be the 2A argument. I'm going for the racist side. They read the impact for us in the 2AC Heath card about disability as an identity category is bad. Rights causes litigation under identity only. That pushes out that which cannot go under the name of disability insofar as it is protected by the law, by the Civil Rights Amendment, or by the ADA, be it narcissism, the status of being undocumented, and present structural debilitation is what our critique is about, which all provides an alibi for its continuation, which is the Spade piece of evidence. But if we win a link, you will conclude the perm links too, because it includes the one I see in its justifications and protect the 2 and are presumed links to the links are to the perm as well, insofar as the one here does not explain what the perm does, so you should assume it includes their scholarship and no new to our spin. Now the line by line on the K proper ADA good. Drop Civil Rights Act did not protect disability, which is why the ADA had to be created to solve never a net benefit of the app. Case turns K. Worker power is bad. The productive workers strength their ableist standards of productivity. That is the Gopi evidence. It is the K link I went for. Trump turns wrong would be true if we made out of the alt, but we said it's all to deliberation of the one I see. Ivory Tower is done on framework. They must win corporations better. No, presumably fiat and alt. We don't. All we have to do is when the app is bad, which is why the negative ballot cannot result in the corporations filling in any more than an app ballot can stop corporations from filling in. Lawsuits inevitable is a counterplan to solve their offense, not ours. So you should vote negative to reject the one I see, which is the framework. Links filter framework. You should evaluate the one I see as a political and ideological artifact. Proximity filters. Your ballot cannot stop extinction, but it can refuse to join an NYU to build an infrastructure that requires the sacrifice of disabled life through its justifications. I am going for the resiliency to decide. This will answer their skills arguments. The framework argument is that if we engage in the way that they want us to, we will give them the skills that they need to implement the affirmative IRL. This is our thesis claim about infrastructure because it makes us into the living infrastructure of their model in the abstract and their skills in particular. This wears us down to build them up because even if we could prove them wrong in this way by outperforming them to convince them that we should not sacrifice disabled people for a better future or rely on ableist justifications for critiques of Trump. Our impact turn is the implicit demand for resiliency that they force disabled people to occupy in order to be taken seriously, in order to win that the link outweighs case, etc. Now their pivot to we're not framework, no case is answered by the universal capacitation. The capacitation to dissad, requiring a competitive alternative makes every K into a counterplan that loses every time to the perm double bind because critiques don't seek the quick fix solutions of a policy app, but tend to structural issues issues with how we theorize and research in the first place. This functionally eliminates decay and mobilizes capacitation under the assumption we all perform the same labors, but that's precisely what attempts to hypercapacitate Iowa toward the productivity of value for NYU. Their only answer is you can still read the K. Our link to both dissads is an indite of the form that they demand we package it through. They have also not provided a way to weigh the kind of in-round and discursive violence against the impacts of extinction traits. You should never presume that it outweighs if they're right, but insofar as you probably are inclined to do so, which is bad. Now they've dropped every piece of defense on the clash page. That clash turns K wrong. Maximize content neutral skills is impact turned by our arguments about capacitation proves they use us as infrastructure to capacitate themselves into super skilled policymakers unconsidered the eugenic content. Their advocacy, subjectivity, irrelevant. Old selves need not predicate on changing minds. Fairness tricks. Ballot cells. Fairness wrong. Assume they can undo speech act 1 and C, which is wrong. B rely on it is wrong. This is the paradox. Water drinking is a universal precondition. Debate does not entail maximize the app inter cannot solve our offense. You can read a counterplan as above. App choice solves. That was 1AC. That was 1AC cross-lex. If I missed something, you should give me leniency because they have literally just dropped everything on the page. So our defense certainly takes it out. Now the case page. I'm extending the normal means argument. They applicants appeal the plan, then they cannot say it gets rolled back. Their answer was our evidence makes prediction of outcome irrelevant insofar as we're winning. A, their evidence makes incorrect determinations. B, real world is key. So, but the plan would be good. It's not to get justification for the plan is implemented faithfully, which to solve their scenarios. C, the point they have no mechanism to solve for extra legal activity. They're categorically wrong about how civil rights cases get litigated. They require permission by the EEOC under the DOJ. Extend sue. Their approval is barred by the EEOC being unable to function now because Trump will just fire. And when they do, they'll prioritize Trump's fascist agenda to do trans antagonism. Even if a few cases get through, irrelevant, Trump will just fire members until he gets the outcome he wants. And once case gets submitted, he's approved by the DOJ. Pay money will make decisions in favor of corporations, which they turn an offense, which money are dropped.
Okay, 356 starting now.
I think so. Well, yeah, I have any problems, but I don't know if it's a larger issue with the computer itself.
the inevitable end of neoliberalism is collapse. U.S. military aggression, extractive pollution, and backsliding domestic politics. Something has to give. This is structured by Trump, which the F restricts. That makes the F triad create any form of resistance. The only answer to the rise of neoliberalism is the return of strong labor. The SQO has politicized and killed every recourse for workers. The courts historically acted as a bastion for labor rights, and the F is key to revitalize that by providing workers the option to pursue violations of bargaining rights in civil rights courts. The 2NR drop fee shifting, which removes financial barriers, burden shifting, which solves delay tactics, and injunctions, which force corporate compliance. They say normal means it gets rolled back, but there's no warrant because all of the arguments are about how workers will take it to court, not how these decisions, they say there's no mechanism for extra legal action, but they need to win a uniqueness push for anything that Pam Bondi would push, insofar as all of their examples about how ICE will get or infiltrate the courts, they need to win that ICE is having collective bargaining rights infringed on. There's no evidence, which means you only default to the cases of workers suing companies. They also extend CO and say the Pam Bondi makes decisions for corporations, but the warrant about that in the card is actually just about the quorum. It only applies if the EEOC is needed to make new rules. Pam Bondi is not the one litigating these cases. It is the private right of action was cold conceded, and it is specifically key because it proves that only workers who hire their own attorneys and then have those fees covered by companies solve. Pam Bondi is irrelevant. Okay. Uniqueness framing up top. Unions and lawsuits are inevitable in the AF or the SQO. They actively need to win, that Amazon winning these lawsuits are good. The only answer is just, we just have to disprove the AF, but you have to disprove the AF by saying Amazon winning suits is disproving the AF. You cannot just hand wave it away. If you haven't won that Amazon winning those suits is good, you default AF because that is our offense. Only the AF gives you the means to undermine the ruling class's ability to enact violence. Top level on the K, on the dark triad K, right 23 frames out any offense here because it proves that conditions materially do improve and correct over time through legal changes like Olmstead, which address segregation of disabled people. There's no union-specific warrant in the 2NR, which means a risk that unions decrease employer discretion to be ableist means you vote AF, which is incredibly ahead on because they implement a barrier in between the employer and the worker. Perm do both, or the logical conclusion to that is perm do both. It solves all of their warrants and provides it by actually having some sort of collectivist discussion to solve all of their impacts. Additionally, the case turns Alder K because calling Trump not human nature does not equate to ableism. Carrington is discussing things like greed versus altruism, which is distinct from physical or mental capacity. It turns Alder's psychological or evolutionary psych arguments because our analysis is about how economic structures overcode decisions. They are isolating or projecting Carrington's intent. It is not. It is greed versus altruism. Extended to the 1AR. On the New Deal link, they didn't go for it, but they just applied it. The 1AR did explicitly answer this link argument. It is not that fiat corrects physiology, but that we need to test the ends of outcomes so we know if those strategies are good. On impacts as eugenics, the unions solve for eugenic logics by implementing a barrier. There is no warrant about why the AF is uniquely key to this insofar as collectivism is better than fascism. On the Trump bad stuff, Trump is bad because of authoritarian violence, like war or climate change, not because he's disabled. He's eroding the federal government now, which is bad, and explodes violence against disabled people. On the rights dissad, rights does not cause litigation only in ceding rights, which is the negs world, is net worse because rights are the only thing that protect people from other violence. You need some sort of centralized protection, otherwise you enable individualized violence, which is way worse. The link work was way too weak, and they have to win framework overwhelmingly, but all of the case defense and offense on the link should be sufficient. Then the 88 link, we didn't drop it. The 1AR extended it. You should give the 1AR leeway, even if it wasn't flagged, because of the neg block. Warrants about civil rights overcome things because the 88 is bad for reasonable accommodations, but civil rights is totalizing. Okay. Framework. Extend or interpolate the implementation of our plan versus competitive alternative, solves all their offense. They get the alt, we just get the act. Their framework their framework offense was all if we said no framework, no case, but that has not been read for 20 years. Clash and fairness are both intrinsic goods and are unique to debate. Only a vision of the debate where we can evaluate the strategy at the level of outcomes allows us to know if our research in here is good, which turns and solves their offense. Their framework block into 2 and C was were to the wrong interp, and there was no 1AR pivot, and it's not ableist to ask the neg to produce a solution because that kind of logic justifies never doing anything and letting ableist violence continue turning all their offense. And Clash, it's good. It's key to learning about the relationship between labor and ableism so we can create solutions, and fairness is good. Competitive activities have potential for good, but only if we give fair evaluation of the line by line. They obviously need fair evaluation too, and we are doing the analysis about why labor activism is key in a legal context. Their interp is extremely ivory tower, which was undercovered by the 2NR. Their model devolves into infinite reps and K-bases, which was dropped and circumvents their ability for substantive engagement. Fair procedure makes debate less educational, which turns all their offense. We are not endorsing our strategy when only we check the violence. On the resiliency dissent, it's wrong. It's not making you debate. It's not you, but the debate is a unique site for engagement and Clash, and their model decks that. Our model does not force neoliberal or neoliberal people to do impact calc because things like impact insolvency exist. They say and we don't eliminate the K, just say your research should feed it. Solutions are the best way to test reps, proves our reps are good.
Good debate, though. Good debate, though. This is fun.